Here's a fact that surprisingly few people know. Dogs actually love eating grass. Some dogs seem to be absolutely obsessed with it. My dog, for example, will happily stop in the middle of a walk for what looks like a 5-star grass buffet. And honestly, when it comes to grass, I still wish I could just open up a dog's head, walk inside, and ask one simple question. What exactly is so good about this stuff? Over the years, people have come up with several explanations that sound perfectly reasonable, but may not actually be true. Maybe dogs eat grass to make themselves vomit. Maybe they're just hungry and using it to fill their stomachs. Or maybe they're instinctively trying to replace nutrients missing from their everyday diet. So today, let's dig into these long-standing theories, see how well they hold up against science, and hopefully answer one very important question. Why on earth do dogs love grass so much? The first theory is probably the most famous. Many people believe that when a dog's stomach feels uncomfortable, it eats grass to make itself vomit and feel better. But is that actually what's happening? Researchers surveyed 1,571 dogs and found some pretty interesting numbers. About 68% were reported to eat plants either weekly or daily, and grass was by far the most commonly eaten plant, accounting for 79% of the plants reported. Younger dogs were more likely to eat plants, while breed, sex, and diet type didn't appear to make much difference. In other words, eating plants is hardly some weird behavior reserved for a few eccentric dogs. It's extremely common, and here's the really interesting part. Only 9% of dogs were frequently reported to look ill before eating plants, while only 22% were frequently reported to vomit afterward. That makes it difficult to argue that dogs are mainly eating grass because they feel sick or desperately need to throw up. Of course, these numbers came from owner reports, so researchers decided to test the vomiting theory more directly. Researchers fed dogs a dietary supplement called fructooligosaccharides, or FOS, to temporarily disturb their digestive system and produce loose stools. Then they watched what the dogs did. And surprisingly, the dogs actually ate less grass when their intestines were disturbed. In other words, they tended to eat more grass when their digestion was normal, and less when they had mild gastrointestinal trouble. So much for the idea that grass is their personal emergency medicine cabinet. Across the experiment, the dogs ate grass 374 times, but only 2 of those events were followed by vomiting. If vomiting were really the main reason dogs ate grass, you'd expect the numbers to look very different. And there's more. A 2021 study looked at 232 Belgian Shepherd dogs. About 87.5% were reported to eat grass, and eating grass was not significantly associated with vomiting. A smaller group of dogs underwent endoscopic examination of the stomach, and the researchers did not find evidence that ordinary grass-eating behavior was clearly linked to gastric disease. So after multiple studies, the classic explanation that dogs eat grass mainly to soothe an upset stomach or make themselves vomit looks pretty weak. The second theory is much simpler. Maybe dogs eat grass because they're hungry. The idea is easy to understand. The dog skips breakfast, goes for a walk, spots a fresh patch of grass, and thinks, well, I suppose salad will do. But dogs can actually tolerate periods without food pretty well. Some dogs will even voluntarily skip meals and somehow remain cheerful, energetic, and completely convinced that their next meal should still involve refusing the one you just prepared. And their wild ancestors, wolves, certainly didn't enjoy 3 perfectly timed meals every day. They could go through periods of feast and famine while covering huge distances. So a dog that hasn't eaten for a few hours is probably not desperately chewing grass just to survive. From everyday observation, grass eating can look more like a voluntary little indulgence than an emergency food source. But here's where science throws us a curveball. In a 2007 Australian study, researchers gave 12 dogs 3 regular meals a day, while also giving them unlimited access to a very special all-you-can-eat buffet. And there was only one item on the menu: grass. The buffet was open all day, with no time limit. Over 6 days, researchers recorded how often the dogs ate grass. The dogs ate grass more frequently before meals and less frequently after they had eaten their regular food. In other words, the fuller they were, the less interested they seemed to be in grass. The researchers suggested that hunger or satiety may influence grass eating. That's certainly interesting, although we should keep in mind that only 12 dogs took part in the experiment. So does that prove dogs eat grass to fill their stomachs? Not quite. It's evidence for a relationship between hunger and grass eating, but it doesn't prove that hunger is the whole story. I'll leave that one for you to decide. And then we have the third theory. Maybe dogs eat grass to obtain nutrients that are missing from their normal diet. This idea is especially interesting because some dogs seem surprisingly picky about what they eat. Owners have reported dogs showing preferences for particular types of plants, and even for different parts of the plant. Some prefer the roots, some prefer the leaves, and some seem perfectly happy to eat the whole thing, dirt included. You may also have noticed something strange when your dog eats meat. Dogs often swallow food surprisingly quickly, sometimes with barely any chewing at all. But when it comes to grass, they may sit there chewing away like a gourmet food critic evaluating a 5-course meal. Why? Dogs are built more for tearing and slicing than for the side-to-side grinding motion humans use to thoroughly chew food. Their jaw joints simply don't allow the same kind of lateral movement. Yet somehow, when grass appears, these supposedly minimalist chewers suddenly become professional sommeliers. Maybe grass tastes amazing. So one day, I opened my dog's mouth, took out a piece of grass, and tasted it myself. And let me tell you, it was bitter. Not completely unbearable, but definitely not something I'd put on the menu at a fancy restaurant. So what exactly does grass have that keeps dogs coming back? There isn't much research that can answer that question, but fortunately, there is one very unusual case. Researchers reported an 11-year-old male miniature poodle that had been eating plants every day for 7 years, and vomiting after doing so. That sounds like a perfect case for the grass causes vomiting theory. Except remember, the broader research doesn't really support that explanation. The researchers performed a detailed medical examination and found no obvious disease. They then changed the dog's diet and provided a high-fiber food. And within just 3 days, the dog stopped eating plants and stopped vomiting. Over the next 13 months of follow-up, the problem did not return. That raises an intriguing possibility. Perhaps this particular dog was eating plants because its diet wasn't providing enough fiber, and changing the diet removed the reason to keep doing it. We can imagine a fascinating story in our heads. Maybe the dog somehow sensed that something was missing, recognized that plants contained fiber, and tried to fix the problem itself. Unfortunately, there was one small issue. This is just one dog. The researchers could not prove exactly what the dog was thinking or which nutrient was responsible. So while the case suggests that dietary deficiency, especially fiber deficiency, might play a role in some individual dogs, it's nowhere near enough evidence to say that dogs generally eat grass to get missing nutrients. So where does all of this leave us? Researchers have pointed out that wolves and other wild canids eat plants too. Grass stems are commonly found in wolf scat, and some observations suggest that wolves don't just swallow partially digested vegetation from the stomachs of their prey. They may also deliberately eat fresh grass themselves. That means grass eating probably wasn't invented by modern dogs after moving into our homes. It may be a very old behavior that goes deep into the history of canids. Some pieces of the puzzle are starting to make sense. Others are still stubbornly refusing to cooperate. Hopefully, future research will speed things up and finally solve some of these mysteries. Until then, if your dog stops on a walk and starts grazing like a tiny lawnmower, at least now you know the answer may be a lot more complicated than his stomach hurts. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. See you next time.